Hey, what's up guys? Aaron here. Today we're going to be talking about 7 things that Apple and the iWatch need to accomplish to be immediately relevant. So first off, number 1 is that the iWatch needs to be a watch first. And what I mean by this is it can have a lot of things going on at once, but it needs to tell the time first. Now the iWatch needs to be able to handle a splash now and then, and it needs to have a distinctive display that's going to concur with the brightness outside. Now rarely do I say that I think Apple should be taking notes from a different company, but I definitely think that Apple needs to take a closer look at how Motorola is designing the Moto 360. Next, number 2 is the iWatch needs to be completely customizable. Now, I'm the first to admit that I'm a huge fan of Android Wear. However, there's been a huge inability to let developers create watch faces. Apple needs to know that this is not just a watch, but it's also a fashion statement. It's basically inevitable that everybody's going to want to customize their own iWatch in a different way. So when the Apple iWatch launches, if I can't go to the Apple App Store and download a watch face, then I think Apple's already blew it. So I think personalization and customization is going to be a huge factor and feature to consumers. Now Apple also needs to go a step above this because personalization is not just software, but it's also hardware. So Apple definitely needs to include swappable wristbands, and Apple could even go as far as to offer the iWatch in 2 different sizes, which they'll probably do to accommodate both genders. Now when it comes to watches in general, not just smartwatches, there is a ton of different body styles and wristbands to choose from. There's everything from leather to metal wristbands, analog and digital displays, and of course size and shape factor is going to matter as well. There is large and small watches currently, as well as round and square watches. So in my opinion, it is a pretty personal decision when someone goes out to buy either a round or a square or a large or small smartwatch. So with that being said, Apple could bring 2 different size smartwatches as well as 2 different shaped smartwatches. Now whether Apple's going to release some type of case or some type of skins that can overlay over the smartwatch, I still think Apple needs to make sure that there is plenty of colors to choose from and plenty of different varieties once it is launched. Next, number 3 is it needs to fit into the iOS and Apple ecosystem smoothly. So what Apple needs to do is they need to build a strong device that's going to be self-sufficient. However, it becomes even more powerful and stronger when connected to other Apple iOS devices. Now you can bet that Apple's going to be focusing highly in iOS 8 and with the iWatch on fitness. Now you can be sure that Apple's going to use the iWatch to help count steps as well as a heart rate monitor. Now in iOS 8, Apple is said to be implementing a lot of smart home features, so giving the iWatch the ability to change your thermostat at home as well as turn off your lights would be an awesome feature. Now the iWatch should be able to do things like pay for things as well as adjust the volume on your Apple TV. It should be able to unlock your Mac, and it needs to be able to do all these features without becoming a UI nightmare. I want to easily be able to use Evernote for taking notes, Lyft and Uber for calling cars, Spotify for music, Google for maps. Now speaking of maps, one thing that I'd like to see on the iWatch is some very good GPS navigation. Next, number 4 is it needs to have an extremely polished application. So the reason for purchasing a smartwatch might be different for someone who perhaps is going to use it for traveling purposes, someone who's going to use it just for notification purposes, or perhaps someone that's going to be using it for gaming. Now personally, the 2 things that I'm most interested in seeing polished and completely ready to go on the iWatch is receiving notifications as well as taking notes. And I'm on Twitter and Instagram all the time, so I definitely want to be able to post a tweet as well as post a picture to Instagram. Now if Apple is as wise as I think they are, they will have created a complete section in the App Store that will launch directly when the iWatch launches that will have numerous applications already adapted for that interface. I'm interested to figure out the dialogue that Apple's going to introduce at the keynote and try to convince us on how we all need a smartwatch. Next, number 5 is it needs to be an extremely helpful companion. Now Apple has ventured down the path of trying to introduce something that's going to help you in your everyday life via a voice assistant in Siri. Now when Siri first launched, everybody was excited for having a voice assistant on their smartphone. However, consumers quickly found out that Siri was not too intelligent. Now currently in the Apple iPhone 5S, Siri has definitely become a lot more intelligent. However, she still has a long way to go. Now, this is a spot where I think the Motorola 360 is going to shine, as it's going to have Google Now as a voice assistant rather than Siri. A smartwatch needs to definitely be reliable and responsive, so Apple needs to definitely improve Siri. Next, number 6 is good battery life. Now it's not going to matter too much how well Apple builds their smartwatch, whether it comes to software or hardware, if the Apple iWatch is constantly dead and has a horrible battery. Now in my opinion, this has been something that's plagued every single smartwatch to date. And one of the biggest reasons why it's important to have long battery life on a wearable device is that the company is trying to convince you that you need this in your everyday life. So for instance, if you forget to charge the device, the next morning you go to leave and that device is not charged and it's completely dead, you're not going to take it, therefore literally stopping the habit of getting used to wearing that wearable device. Now obviously we can't expect weeks or months out of a fully functioning smartwatch, However, I think Apple can introduce something that's going to last anywhere from 3 to 4 days. And lastly, number 7 is the device needs to feel like it isn't even there. So in reality, we all want our smartwatch to be right in our face when we need it for notifications as well as answering and rejecting phone calls. However, we also want it directly out of our way whenever we don't need it. And I think this is going to be an extremely important feature that Apple needs to provide to the consumer. We definitely need to be able to control what notifications we receive, and the watch needs to look exquisite overall. Now, as we all know, Apple is extremely late to the wearable scene, as Samsung has released at least 4 or 5 smartwatches already. So I'm interested to see if Apple gets it right the very first time, or if they're going to have to take a few iterations to get it perfect. Now, Apple is known for creating revolutionary products, and the Apple iWatch to me is going to be one of the true tests of innovation. And the Apple iWatch could prove to be one of Apple's toughest innovations yet. Now, with Apple being Apple, they are going to sell a ton of iWatches. I just hope that that's not the idea and the mentality that they took when they actually produced the watch. I hope they're actually taking the average consumer into mind, since they've taken so much time to produce this Apple iWatch. Anyways, guys, that's going to do it for me on this one. This has been 7 things that I think Apple and the iWatch need to bring to the table to be immediately relevant. And let me know down in the comments section below if you're going to be purchasing an Apple iWatch, and also let me know what feature you're most interested in. I'm going to be giving away an Apple iWatch here on the channel, so if you're not yet a subscriber, now's a great time to become one. And make sure you're following me on Twitter, as giveaway updates are constantly posted to my Twitter feed. All my social networks will be linked down below. Be sure to head over and give me a follow. If you have not yet subscribed to the channel, now's a great time to do so. I'd like to thank you guys for watching. As I mentioned earlier, my name is Aaron, and I'll see you guys on the next one.